I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, energyandresourcesdigest.com. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Thanks very much for having me on.
And happy Canadian Thanksgiving and happy Columbus Day.
You know, I should have wished that to you right off the bat. Sorry about that, my Canadian friend. I forgot to do that.
Well,
yeah.
And of course, I have to give people a history lesson. Canada started celebrating Thanksgiving 60 years before the Americans did.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's a good time to have a Thanksgiving. It kind of spreads the holidays out a little more. Of course, our big holiday coming up, and it's yours too, is Halloween, because all my friends like to dress up and stuff and just unleash their inner child. So we have that coming up. And we'll see how that goes.
Well, some people thought in the last couple of weeks a little trick-or-treating was happening in the gold market.
You mean, yeah, well...
Scary stuff.
The funny thing is, this happens every year around this time, and yet this year it seems worse than usual. And what happens is when the Chinese go on their holiday, then the gold market gets sold down because the Chinese aren't there to defend it, or rather to pick up bargains, we might say. So if you want to do a run on a gold market, that's a good time. We really saw things crack on Tuesday, which is just after Germany got back from a holiday. So there probably were less people ready to buy gold there. The Chinese went around and just the selling and the selling and the selling went on all week. We saw important support broken, stuff like that, but something really strange happened at the same time, and I can't emphasize this enough. And that is that during the week, I mean, I was noticing this, other people were noticing this, the gold ETFs were not selling a lot of gold, those that hold physical gold. And on Friday, the gold ETFs actually bought a lot of gold. In fact, the GLD ended up with more than 300,000 troy ounces of gold on its books at the end of the week than it had at the beginning of the week, even though the price of gold went on a slip and slide of doom. So, what are we to make of that? You almost never get that kind of non-confirmation in the gold markets, but obviously some big institutions are preparing themselves for something, I would say, or at least raising their exposure to gold. So I thought that was extremely interesting.
Well, is that because people still expect some major correction in the equity markets?
That could be part of it. Could be Deutsche Bank, which has not worked out a deal with the U.S. government. Everyone thought that was going to happen. Didn't happen. Could be the upcoming Brexit, which looks worse and worse for the internationals there. Could be all sorts of things. Could be the U.S. election, which has many of my friends absolutely unhinged. And, so I'm not sure what there is to do about it. We seem to be left with two bad choices here. But, that's just, a smattering of the things that are going on that I think people think, maybe we need some kind of protection against risk. And so that's kind of what we're seeing now.
Well, when you talk about politics being a hard-hitting sport, I was at a sports bar watching the Blue Jays take on Texas, and some of the patrons asked to have the debate put on as well. And I said to the sports bar manager, well, it is full contact sports right now, isn't it?
When I was going through the Houston airport briefly, all the people in Texas could do is talk about that game. But yeah, politics is a full contact sport. Seems to be getting dirtier and dirtier. So make of it what you will, but it's really brutal, and I think that has people nervous. One more thing I would add on that is that Japan announced over the weekend, which is whenever you announce news that you think will rattle the market, that their talk about slowing down the pace of like quantitative easing is probably going to be pushed off. So why are they nervous? I don't know. They have more debt than anybody in the world, yet they seem to feel they need to keep adding to it. It's rather a strange set of circumstances, actually.
In Japan, what they need to do is have more people.
They do. They need to, you know what, though? I've been reading articles, and there's just such incredible pressure on young people in that country to conform and to meet certain standards that if you don't, you feel like an absolute failure. And like, who feels like having kids if you aren't along that select path? So somehow Japan needs to change its culture. And since the U.S. can't even get a handle on its own culture, I don't think we should be giving them any lessons. But I'm not sure what their solution is, really.
Well, I mean, the reason Japan invented robots to make cars is they didn't have the people to do it. And now, of course, they're the ones pushing self-driving cars. They plan to have self-driving taxis ready for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics because they just don't have the personnel to do it.
We'll see, we'll see how that goes. One other thing that I saw interesting in the world of cars is that German industrial leaders got together and said they want to eliminate the internal combustion engine for cars by the year 2030. That's not that far away. But that's like huge, and we can talk about that more when we speak about oil in a bit. But I just think that there's tremendous changes going on in the world, and all these changes, let's face it, all these changes make people nervous too. You don't know if like the stuff you have now is actually going to be wiped out in the future because some giant corporation decides that it wants to do things differently. Of course people are going to be nervous about this.
Yeah, well, 3D printing, they keep saying is going to get rid of manufacturing.
Oh, yeah, well, we keep hearing that. And I mean, yeah, we could have a long argument about that. 3D printing is not quite everything that it's cracked up to be. It works well for some things, but I wouldn't bet all my poker chips on that one. We'll see.
Well, one of the proposals I heard was that they would ship the chassis to a car dealership, but they would print out the body of the rest of the car for you. Yeah,
as long as they can do it cheaply. With the economies of scale that we're seeing in the new big gigafactories that they are building, not only in Nevada, by the way, they won't let me near that thing. I already asked.
So is that like an Area 52?
Yeah, it is. But one of the things they aren't doing that we know of is they aren't doing 3D printing. It's all about economies of scale, of doing things the absolute most efficient way you can. And right now, 3D printing is not one way to do it. Futurists can talk about it, and maybe it'll be great down the road. But right now, that is not actually working out.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick. Sean, what's going on with oil? With the Russians talking about cutting back production, joining up with OPEC to do that, will they actually have any effect?
Yeah, I mean, they will if they can get past three giant obstacles, which is Iraq, Iran, and Nigeria, and sometimes Libya. So we'll throw that in for a fourth one. Those are companies, might as well be companies. Those are countries that really want to raise their oil production, and they have the means to do it. Now, actually, I had an article about this for Energy and Resources Digest recently, And a while back, when like Saudi Arabia first proposed a like oil deal, and all oil prices went up before everyone realized that wasn't going to work. What they talked about was a rollback of like production to levels in like January of this year. And Iran, which doesn't like Saudi Arabia anyway, came out and said, no, we aren't going to do that. That's absolutely stupid. Why would we do that? And so in the latest deal, which is tentatively agreed to, which still has to be worked out in November, by the way, because they haven't worked out the details. And that's the great thing about the deal. You can imagine anything you want, but if you don't have the details, then you're up the creek. But in the latest deal, Iran will be allowed to raise production the way that it wants to do. And so that means its new production will have to be absorbed by the other OPEC producers if they're going to keep any lid on it. At the same time, Iraq wants to raise production. Nigeria, which seems to be finally getting through a big civil war, which they're doing is basically finally being decent to the people who were in open rebellion against them. But they still have another civil war, which we can talk about another time, against this Islamic insurgency group. But anyway, in the oil-producing part of Nigeria, they seem to be having peace breaking out. So they really want to raise their production too. They're also going to ask for an exemption. So who's going to cut? That's the thing we don't have to work out. That's the thing that we have to work out because we don't know the answers. And so I expect we'll see a lot of optimism into the next meeting in November. But what happens there, I do not know because there's all sorts of wild cards in play.
Well, I heard one of the reasons why, the U.S. doesn't cut back production is that thousands of little oil companies really are out there trying to produce to stay alive, and they don't want to be caught short.
Well, also we don't have a national oil policy. We can't tell companies what to produce or not to produce. And yeah, they need that cash flow. They need that cash flow. As long as they can get cash flow, there's a chance of them paying off these enormous loans they have. But if they have no cash flow, they can't pay it off. So what are the banks telling those oil companies? Pump and pump and pump. That's what they want them to do. What you want to look for in the U.S. oil fields and natural gas fields, and that's another whole conversation we can ask about, is you want to look for the most efficient producers that are becoming more efficient. There are select companies that are actually doing quite well because they're in the right geographical places, and they know how to drill well, and they know what they're doing, and so those can do well. The ones that are really burdened by massive amounts of debt, the next time the price of oil goes down, they're probably just going to crater again because they're having trouble paying those debts for the price of oil inching up. The price of oil goes down again, which, let's face it, it's a rocky market. It's probably going to happen at some point. Then those will get slammed. I mean, when you could buy those companies is the next time they fall on their faces, but I wouldn't want to buy them now.
Well, we always think now, at least from what's happened to oil, when it hits $50, everybody goes, look at this, it's doing really well. But frankly, for most producers, that's not a good price.
Yeah, well, again, it all depends on where your company is located and how cheaply you can actually produce oil and how much of your actual production mix is oil, because natural gas is actually having a good rally. It's actually doing quite well, and you can bet all the fat was cut out of that industry a long time ago. People might want to look at natural gas producers as well, but one thing they might want to look at, because we just had a big correction in gold, is they might want to look at gold producers, gold explorers, and those kinds of things. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm in Nevada, and I have flown here, and I'll be driving around for a week looking at producers and explorers of gold, silver, and lithium, because lithium is a whole nother story. Once you produce that energy, how do you store it in a good way? I know there's all sorts of new battery technologies on the table, but no one's been able to bring one to the market in any way that's actually economic right now, and it's probably 10 years away before any of that stuff works out. So lithium is the story right now, and I think that there are opportunities. Even though that's run up quite a bit, the potential over the next few years for lithium demand is actually quite high.
Can they meet that demand?
Yeah, they can. Well, for one thing, lithium isn't uncommon. You just have to produce it in a way where you can actually make money doing it. And there are new lithium projects that are being rolled out. Some are still years away. But if they're run by the right people who have actually done this kind of thing before, that's important. You want someone who isn't just a guy standing on a patch of earth that he says that he's going to turn into a lithium mine at some point. Someone who actually has a track record of actually succeeding in this business. Then you actually might want to take a look at, the projects they have and that kind of thing. Because, I think we'll see more and more lithium ramp up. Now, when you think about lithium batteries, one thing you have to realize is lithium is only about 2% of a lithium battery. We could call them by other names instead, because other metals are much more important. But those other metals are produced in much larger amounts. There isn't that much lithium produced. So we have a supply-demand squeeze that's going to exist for probably the next few years. And that's a time of opportunity when you can actually do that. Switching horses to gold, because I know I have to keep going back to this. There hasn't been a major gold discovery in at least a decade. And during the big crunch we had in 5 years, the big gold producers were not filling their pipelines with new projects, or else they were filling their pipelines with projects that, as it turns out, were maybe not the best things. They're just, big amounts of money are needed. I think that there's some small to medium-sized projects out there that would fit very nicely into existing operations for some large gold miners in Nevada. And so that's the kind of thing I'll be looking at this week. There is opportunity out there, and I think people have to realize that, not get scared by the big pullback we had last week. That's the kind of pullback that happens every year around this time. This year was worse than normal, but what's that mean? That means that the opportunities out there are a little better than usual, too. So I think people have to keep that in mind.
So really, you should be exploring for some good gold explorers.
Yeah, I think. Gold explorers that have a path to production and they have the right people running it. Again, we're in a situation where someone who hasn't really done this before is actually going to find it tough. A lot of banks have actually exited the market because they got hosed. And so now, they have to get financing from various ways that they didn't used to do, or they switch to new people like, say, Sprott, which will finance the project for you, but they're always going to make sure they get paid first, last, and always. And so which is fine, actually. That works out well when it works well. When things don't work out, then, somebody gets left holding the bag, but that'll happen on any kind of project. So I think that that it's a tough market for people who haven't done this before, but for guys who have done this before, there's still path to production and profitability, and things could really work out. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, John, really, boots on the ground make a difference. Like you said, you're going to spend a week exploring new possibilities in Nevada. Should a person who's doing an exploration on their own about where to move their portfolio and what's exciting, do they have to put that kind of work into it too?
Or else they can just listen to someone who does. I mean, you don't have to listen to me. There are plenty of people that actually head out and look at companies. I can tell you one difference I found is that when the price of gold crashed, I just threw this tour together. I called a lot of people and said, can I come look at your project? I've been meaning to look at it anyway. Now might be a good time to do it. And most people, because, they have schedules and they have things going on, they said no. But some said yes. So I have been on tours that have been organized by other people before, and there's a whole bunch of, analysts on it and stuff like that. That's so much easier than actually trying to do this on your own. Let me tell you, I've had some real disappointments of things I wanted to look at this week that it's just not feasible. There's no way that they'll be there to let me in, or else they can stop the equipment that's working right now, or it just might be plain old not safe for anyone to go there right now. So it all depends on what you want to do. I do not recommend that everyone jump in the car and start driving down the highways of Nevada looking at one gold project or another. One thing, they probably won't let you in. But it is tough. But certainly, whatever kind of research you are trying to get, at least get some first-hand stuff, because there's stuff you notice firsthand that you just don't get from looking at their books, because, they really only put in their books, what they need to put in, and numbers can be massaged all sorts of ways. So that should be a component of what anyone is doing in this field is just trying to get that information if they can, because it can help make a real difference.
Well, a lot of the people I talked to expected a pullback in gold because, you can only sustain a hot market for so long, but they didn't expect that the drop would be so severe.
Yeah, well, again, it happened during a week when the Chinese are all on vacation. So the Chinese are not there to buy. And so that allowed whoever was trying to kick gold down the stairs to really get it rolling. And you have to understand how much hot market is flowing around in these global markets, especially because the central banks have the printing presses going wide open, right? So, we have all the stuff going on, and it makes for an extremely volatile market. So you have to be able to ride out volatility, because if you can't ride out volatility, then maybe you should put your money somewhere a little less volatile. These miners that I have been recommending, and I'm probably going to recommend more after I come back from this trip, we'll have to see what I find. But the ones that I recommended before, they're great companies. They may have got shellacked in the last week, but they have great futures ahead of them. And so, if you're in the mood for a bit of shopping for bargains, now is not a bad time to do it.
Sean, thank you so much for chatting with us, especially being a double holiday, Columbus Day in the U.S. and Thanksgiving in Canada.
Is it Columbus Day in the U.S.? I've been traveling so much, I haven't even noticed. Well, yes, though certainly happy Thanksgiving to my Canadian friends. Have a great time and be thankful for what you have, because you live in a great country with so much going for it, especially in natural resources. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks very much.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, energyandresourcesdigest.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Happy Thanksgiving.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.